When I got to toss my hat at a T-Rex and possess his body and soul within the opening half hour of Mario Odyssey, I knew I was in for something that was just gonna be joyous. Cappy, Mario's sentient hat that allows you to possess enemies and gain abilities from them, feels like Mario taking a page out of Kirby's playbook. Rather than this being an iterative change from previous games, something small and incremental, Odyssey represents a drastic difference in both gimmick and format. That format being a mix of Tony Hawk's Pro Skaters, mission structure, and hubs, with the open collectathon nature of Mario 64 and Mario Sunshine, refined to complete perfection. While it is at times a little bit too light on the platforming that I've come to know and love from Mario, Odyssey boasts wildly open level design teeming with things to discover, and the most complex suite of movement options that Mario has ever had. It elicits a feeling of elation and wonder with whiffs of nostalgia, comfortably familiar while taking you on a ride entirely unique for Mario. In short, it's Wanderlust distilled into a Mario game. Sir Reginald Sixpence is shot in the chapel of a casino by a masked assassin, a member of the staff at the eponymous Sexy Brutale casino. This is the first murder that you have to solve in this isometric game of stealth, sleuthing, and incidental intervention through time travel. You start by observing the murder itself, then you reset to the beginning. Trail the assailant to see what he's doing and where, and in this case, you see him take a rifle off of a gun rack before proceeding to the chapel to shoot Reginald. After resetting again, you try to beat the assailant to the gun, but it's secured to the rack, so that plan is a wash. If you try to trail Reginald, instead you come to a safe that you can't unlock, but you observe something when he unlocks it. A blank cartridge spills out, and that sparks an idea. You can reset again, grab the blank as soon as Reginald is out of the room, and still have time to make it to the room with the gun and load the blank into its chamber. You do that, and then you can watch how events change and unfold. The assailant tries to murder Reginald, but fails this time. Your intervention was successful. That's just the tutorial of the Sexy Brutale, but it provides the essence of what it's all about. Observation and investigation in a quirky, charming casino buzzing with life. For a game full of anthropomorphic animal people, Night in the Woods feels tremendously authentic and real. The bigger picture is about the death of a small-town slice of suburbia, but the meat is in grounded characters struggling with very real problems. Low self-esteem, mental illness, how time can erode or strengthen friendships, and struggling for upwards mobility. Night in the Woods is thoughtful and poignant. It gives due care to fleshing out its characters and their struggles, and features some of the best representation of mental illness in particular that I've ever seen in a game. These characters are foxes and cats and alligators, who work at quirky places like the Snap Falcon, and spend their times in band practice or committing misdemeanors. But they feel fully three-dimensional thanks to writing that is equal parts darkly hilarious and courageous in the themes it tries to tackle. Splatoon 2 is, in most ways, an incremental improvement over the first game, but any improvement over a concept that was so fresh at the time, pun not intended, is actually quite huge. Splatoon is a multiplayer shooter that doesn't focus on the objective of racking up kills, but covering more of the map in your team's paint than the enemy. It's an innovative take on shooters, complete with a drip feed of free new maps and weapons, and it comes with a shockingly inventive, super fun, single-player campaign bursting with clever ideas. On top of that, there's a bumping soundtrack, and brand new to Splatoon 2 is a horde mode in the form of Salmon Rush. Replete with style and substance, Splatoon 2 is brilliant. I played Tekken very casually in the past, but it never really clicked with me until Tekken 7. So this is my first real outing with the series. And much like Smash 4 a few years ago, I've been loving not only the process of learning the game itself, but learning how you even approach this game. Because Tekken inhabits an entirely different space from other fighting games. Even skills gleaned from other 3D fighters don't fully translate to the Tekken experience. I couldn't tell you why Tekken 7 is the first game to click with me from this series as opposed to 5 or 6 or Tag or any previous iteration. And that's maybe a critical failing on my part, but what I know for certain is that I adore the feel of Tekken 7. Every impact feels exactly perfect, including the really crunchy counter hits, the swings of the camera for command grabs, and the biggest difference that is new to Tekken 7 is the slow motion that kicks in at the end of matches when things come down to a virtual photo finish. It creates an explosion of hype. That right there is exquisite. And all of that helped me settle in to Tekken's rhythm and pure focus on fundamentals. Spacing, whip punishing, applying smart pressure while slowly accumulating intimate knowledge of incredibly complex characters. Plus, it features this, the best QTE of all time. More than anything, Hellblade is made by its unequaled sound design. Incessant voices cram themselves into the back of your head, whispering reminders to you about your failures. They sneak through your ears into your mind and fill you with doubt. Sometimes they boom all around you, telling you you can't succeed. Sometimes, more rarely, they're positive, like your inner monologue at its best trying to motivate you and push you forward. But because there are so many conflicted voices straining your attention, you can never fully trust what any one of them says, but you always have that temptation to give credence to their words. This not only conveys the doubt within Senua, the game's main character, but establishes doubt in the mind of the player. That is one of Hellblade's many brilliant narrative tricks that puts you into Senua's boots. When you live with mental illness, you find yourself sometimes being lied to by your inner monologue, and that's something that Hellblade attempts to simulate and what I find most compelling about it. Yeah, I enjoyed the heavy, deliberate combat, the incredible enemy and environmental design, and outside of the game itself, the commitment Ninja Theory made to making a true AA title, an indie game with cinematography and production values of a AAA game. I appreciated all of that, but what I was truly enthralled by was how intense, real, and emotionally exhausting Hellblade was. XX is the most naked of Mega Man X homages, but it's welcome in an era where X is sadly absent. And it's not as if it's content to live purely in X's shadow. 20XX forges its own identity by taking the familiar trappings of Mega Man X and putting them in a procedurally generated roguelike full of unique bosses and power-ups that modify everything you know and love. And you know what? It all feels pixel perfect. And while it's derivative of Mega Man X, the reason that I love it so much is because it's incredibly well realized, and the roguelike elements work, and that takes real effort, care, and skill. So this isn't so much a ripoff as it is a love letter. The honeyed words it says are comforting and familiar, but the ink it's written in is its own special blend.
Go tell Aunt Rhody. Go tell Aunt Rhody.
Resident Evil has always been mutating, so the change to a first-person perspective shouldn't come as such a surprise. But the most pleasant surprise of all was just how rock-solid Resident Evil 7 is. It relocates the setting to a Louisiana bayou, trades third-person for first-person, and dabbles more in traditional horror than the survival horror of Resident Evil 1, or the action horror of the RE4 era. And yet it maintains the mix of self-seriousness and camp and grotesque bioweapons that are embedded in Resident Evil's DNA. It helps that this swamp mansion is my all-time favorite Resident Evil setting, and that the first person handles so well and lays the groundwork for an excellent VR mode that gives the player complete freedom, and that the molded are effective threats in this suffocating atmosphere. That and the Bakers are all charmers. Each member of the Baker family represents their own themed section of the game, and the personalities of the Bakers and their areas complement each other wonderfully. So not only is this my favorite Resident Evil setting, these are also my favorite RE antagonists. Most of all though, I'm just glad I can say that I enjoyed a modern Resident Evil again, and I really enjoyed this one. One of the first things that I was struck by in Neo is the blistering pace of combat. Combat that doesn't sacrifice calculated choices and caution while upping the pace to something even faster and more decisive than that of Bloodborne. And Neo is more than just a derivative Souls-like. Though on that topic, it is the most successful non-FromSoft Souls-like game out there. Neo boasts a bonkers amount of complexity, something that is truly staggering. Systems are layered within systems. You can excavate and always find something beneath that strata of mechanics that you've just recently unearthed. It's a depth that is hard to overstate, and some of its most prominent systems are the biggest appeal. You have a very small set of weapon types to choose from, and the game is, at minimum, dozens of hours long. And while you would think that would get repetitious, it isn't, because mastery doesn't come quick. And learning is a long-term process because of how varied the movesets of these weapons are. And that's by nature of the game's multiple combat stances and the extensive list of upgrades that add new functions and attacks to each weapon. And these weapons feel immaculate to play with. It feels incredible for fleet-footed William to be dashing at enemies, swinging the Kasarigama, staying in just long enough to get hits in and then backing out of their deadly range. All while doing things like actively reloading your stamina with key pulses and all of the other things that embody the core of Neo. The core loop of the game is just sublime. Neo is an endless well of depth and combat that is both deadly and decisive. Fightin Rage throws you to the wolves, and it's better for it. They tell you almost nothing up front, and what at first appears to be a simple mashy beat-em-up quickly gives way to frequent bursts of insight starting minutes into the game and continuing hours into it. I had so many moments where my eyes went wide and I just had to ask my flabbergasted self, wait, I can do that? And before long, I was engrossed in trying to push the limits of what I could do with very few buttons. It creates a heavy, hot, thumping environment that wafts violence at you and keeps you glued to it until your thumbs hurt. And then you start unlocking enemies as playable characters. It's been so long since I came across such a compelling beat-em-up, and I firmly believe that Fightin Rage can stand the test of time as one of the best the genre has to offer. So that's it for this half of my top 20 games of 2017. Next up on Wednesday, we will have the top 10. Again, feel free to play along at home and try to guess what is going to be in my top 10 and what the order is going to be, and feel free to share your own top 10s for 2017. Thank you all for watching, take it easy, have a good one.